That should be all the volunteers. So the first one's going to be
Welcome to this regular Board of Education meeting for the School District of Manawa. This is both a virtual and in-person meeting of the Board of Education this evening. If you are attending this meeting virtually, it may be a new experience for some, so please allow me to take a moment to review some procedures that will allow everyone to participate. When speaking, please state your name, address, and topic before beginning your comments. Some meeting participants are joining by telephone and cannot see the face or the name of the speaker as shown on a computer screen. The public participation at board meetings, as per bylaw 0167.3, applies to this virtual hybrid meeting as well. Please mute your phone or computer microphone to prevent feedback and background noise during times when you are not speaking. There is a chat box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen for those attending virtually this evening. The chat box may be used to pose a question. The name or telephone number of the person posting the chat comment will appear on the screen. The board president will read the question aloud during the appropriate section of the meeting for the guests calling in or by telephone. This meeting has an opportunity for public comment under agenda item number 12. If you would like to register to make comments during this meeting, please type your name, address, and topic in the chat box at this time. If you are joining this meeting by telephone tonight and would like to register to speak, please state your name, address, and topic now. This meeting is being recorded. The recording includes anything typed into the chat box.
All right, thank you, Dr. Opper. We will come to order. The Manawa Board of Education exists to lead and serve to support the education of all students, focused on developing policies, retaining highly effective staff, acting on behalf of the community, and ensuring the sustainability of the district through open and clear communication. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Pecky, if you could call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jepson?
Here.
So, Mrs. Ryerson?
I'm here.
Mr. Griffin?
here.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Mrs. Pecky here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Johnson?
I am here as well. Thank you. Dr. Opper, can you verify publication of meeting?
Yes, it was.
Can I ask a quick question? I know I'm new at this. Where do we publish these?
Dr. Opper, if you could clarify that.
The public library and the city hall.
As well as online.
Online.
And it's also published in the district building as well.
So we do not publish it then in the Racine Journal as policy 165.1 says?
There would be, that's not even our
It's your published policy?
group of constituency though.
I understand that, but that's what your policy states, is that you are going to publish it in the Racine Journal. And the last direct date was November of 2019 and everything. It says you're going to put it in the Racine Journal. So
Then that would be a typo on our part. That is going to need to be addressed by policy committee. What was the policy number?
165.1.
Yeah, that, I have a feeling was something that was in standard and nobody happened to catch that when we adopted our policy. So that will need to be referred for correction to policy and human resources.
Thank you.
All right, election results. Results are available in the packet for review. Does any member have any questions about the certification? Okay, election of officers. Basically, we start in order, president, vice president, treasurer, clerk. Nominations do not need to be seconded. A person can nominate himself or herself. A person can, the nominees do not have to leave the room. We will be voting by ballot. Everyone should have ballots at their place. So we will begin with nominations for president.
I nominate Joanne Johnson.
I have a nomination by Mrs. Pecky for Joanne Johnson. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Mr. Holman. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Mr. Griffin.
I have a nomination of Mr. Griffin by Mrs. Ryerson. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, ballot would be cast on paper. And Mrs. O'Brien, are you able to collect and tabulate ballots?
I am.
Are these color-coded ballots?
Was there any particular color coding to it, Dr. Opper?
No, you can just choose a color for each one.
Whoopsie, sorry, thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna just use that counter over there.
Ballots have been cast. There are 4 votes for Mrs. Johnson and 3 votes for Mr. Griffin.
Right, next office for election would be vice president.
I would like to nominate Russ Johnson.
I have a nomination for Russ Johnson by Mr. Holman. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Griffin.
I have a nomination for Mr. Griffin by Mrs. Ryerson. Is there a second? No second is needed. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, ballots can be cast for vice president.
Thank you.
Mrs. Johnson, may a nomination be declined?
Yes, if you're nominated for an office and it's not something you wish to do, you absolutely can decline.
Ballots have been cast. There are 4 for Mr. Russ Johnson and 3 for Mr. Pete Griffin.
All right, next up, we have treasurer.
Do I self-nominate? Because I will.
If you would so like to,
I would be delighted to do that.
I would second that. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Do we need to do a ballot with one person, or would you prefer a voice vote? Those in favor of Mrs. Petke as treasurer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, we have clerk.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Ryerson.
I have a nomination for Mrs. Ryerson by Mr. Griffin. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Holman.
Is there a second to that? I actually will second that one. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Great. And cast a ballot for clerk.
Thank you.
Ballots have been cast. There are 4 votes for Mr. Russ Holman and 3 votes for Ms. Sandra Ryerson.
All right, annual board appointments. Buildings and grounds. Mr. Johnson, you currently chair buildings and grounds. I will have you continue to do so. Mr. Griffin, buildings and grounds. Mr. Holman, buildings and grounds. Curriculum committee. Mr. Holman, you currently chair curriculum committee. I will have you continue to do so. Mrs. Jepson, curriculum committee. And
Do I have a choice in that, Mrs. Johnson?
generally it's appointment. Any board member can attend any committee meetings.
I just feel I add value elsewhere, much more value to a different committee than I would to my curriculum, but that's where you want me, that's fine.
I think he would be a fantastic addition.
I disagree, but I'll try. Thank you.
And I would be the third person on curriculum. Currently, the ad hoc human growth and development is not active. Service was just done, so that would not need to be addressed until 3 years when it's up again. Policy and human resources, I will chair that one. Mrs. Ryerson on policy and Mrs. Pecky on policy. Ad hoc recognition committee is to remain the same. Board representatives currently are Mrs. Pecky and myself. Mrs. O'Brien is the administrative representative. Mrs. Wright, Mrs. Conkle are the teacher representatives. Mrs. Lobianco is our support staff. And Dr. Opper attends and kind of helps us where need be. And Mrs. Flynn continues to assist us with all of the myriad of tasks she needs to do. I will continue to have Mrs. Petke accept the staff exit interviews. That's done in conjunction with Mrs. Pry. Finance committee will be chaired by Mrs. Petke. Mr. Johnson on that committee as well, and myself on that committee. CISA 6, Mrs. Petke, if you would serve in that capacity. Legislative contact, I will continue to do so. And WASB convention delegate, I think I will defer to appointing that until we get closer to convention time.
So, not everyone on the board is on a committee?
Everyone is on a committee.
Did I miss what you're gonna be doing, Pete?
Buildings and grounds.
Building
Pete's
ground?
building
That's
and
what you are,
grounds.
okay, sorry. I was trying to jot names just so I kind of knew where everyone was at, okay.
Yep, and again, any member is welcome to attend any committee meeting. Committee meetings have always been incredibly informal and to both public as well as other board members as well.
Okay.
All right, presentations, a look back and forward. Dr. Opper. Oh, yes, I'm
Did
sorry.
I miss the finance committee appointee?
Finance will be, Mrs. Petke is going to chair. Treasurer typically chairs of finance, and Mr. Johnson and myself.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say.
That's quite okay. All right, good, okay. All right, Dr. Upper, you have your preview of the state of the district.
Yes, a reorganization meeting is a great time to celebrate the accomplishments of the district, and tonight this will be very brief. Usually when we get to the point when it is the state of the district, it would be words with a lot of visuals, lots of photographs of things happening in the district to really make it interesting. And I hope again this fall to get back out to all our municipalities and visit as we did pre-COVID. But this is just a quick first look at some of the things that have happened over the last few years. So in terms of updated systems, one of the places that this board started was with policies and administrative guidelines. Presently, we use the company Neola under the heading Board Docs for biannual updates or more frequent updates as needed. 7 years ago, there may have been policies dating back to the 60s and 70s with nothing more current, and many of those were done on a typewriter. So it was definitely one of the first projects to get that underway. We've created hiring protocols for the timing, the sequence, and with the staffing shortages we have across the state right now, it's extremely important that we have those protocols in place. You have your annual staff and program change process. So over the past several years, we've been resizing due to declining enrollment, and then using conservative budget forecasting so that we're able to live within our means. Soon you'll be taking a look at the annual updates to all of the handbooks. There are many of them, so we spread them over several months so that it's not overwhelming to any one committee during any given month. The teachers created a salary advancement model by their own design that's based on both community service and advancing themselves in their professional growth. And there's a new wage model for support staff that was recently adopted. There's a work order system that is both for maintenance and for technology support. So those tickets go directly to the people that can provide the service in a very efficient way. And we also review our key performance indicators annually, and that's something that we're going to be looking at very soon. In terms of infrastructure and maintenance, we've passed 2 referenda with the community, the $12 million capital improvement projects that should be complete for the most part by the end of the summer. And that final project would be the project for paving the middle school, high school parking lot and your driveways. And the operational budget, there is a small amount of money left in there. And we're taking a look if there's any additional grooming that needs to be done on the former elementary site to enhance that green space. Over the years, numerous energy efficiency projects have been completed. There are new roofs on the building. There are secure entryways. HVAC systems have been replaced. The windows at the elementary building. Here, the boilers, the water heaters, and water softeners were added at both buildings. So a great deal of work has been accomplished in these last several years to really improve and enhance the quality of the facilities. A Fund 46 was established. Some people might consider this a savings account for future capital improvement projects. So you have been investing in that over the past several years, so that the goal was in 20 years you'd have $1 million that you could take on some of those more significant projects down the road when perhaps you need to put on another roof. We've also redone the elementary paving. You saw that when you parked this evening, but there's also a very nice bus turnaround area in the back of the building that serves as supplemental parking for larger events and also keeps parent drivers and bus traffic separated from one another for safety reasons. We have a 20-year maintenance plan, and we've been updating and maintaining the district vehicle fleet. So just recently, special education added another van specifically for their use in getting to job sites for training or for going down to the PACE lab. In curriculum and instruction, one of the most amazing things that happened last year was over a weekend, our teachers and staff pivoted from being in person to going virtual, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. And since then, they've done amazing things to support students. And I see that I have a typo in the slide. We also feed students, and the free meals continue. And we just learned recently that that's going to extend into next school year. 7 years ago, some of the elementary school report cards did not have science and social studies on them as those topics were not being taught. We have science and social studies at all grade levels, and we use FOSS kits for science, and we're currently in the process of updating the secondary social studies materials. There is a schedule for both curriculum writing and materials adoption. There's also a professional development plan. I'll be showcasing that a little bit later this evening in terms of the summer-sponsored workshops that are available. And we're also ordering new 4K through 12 math materials, as well as those 6 through 8 social studies resources. Athletic related, we've been busy as well. A lot of things are happening right now, but I'll go back a little bit. We annually get both of the gym floors refinished. The board was able to address the football drainage problem that was a significant issue on the south side of the field, as some of you might remember a few years back. We now have an annual contract for football field maintenance to ensure that the field stays in good condition. Maintaining a football field is significantly different than maintaining a lawn, and therefore we have different experts handling each of those. The track has been restriped. Very proud of the fitness center and the number of citizens from the public that are enjoying that space. This summer, the middle school, high school gym floor is slated for a complete refinish. They will take it down to the bare boards and build up from there. So the district logo, the current one that is board approved, will be the focal point of the floor. And near President Johnson, you will see the boards that have the paint color samples. So if anyone's interested in taking a look at how the floor will turn out, it's a real professional upgrade. You see it and will be able to appreciate much more of the natural wood grain finish, and then using some staining to accent different parts of the floor. And the exterior bleachers are going to be replaced this summer. So that also is moving forward, an exciting project. In the areas of key performance indicators and starting to look forward, this is where the board is going to be engaged in conversation in upcoming meetings about where do we want to set goals, otherwise known as key performance indicators. In learning, the board's already approved the literacy plan that will provide for enhanced phonics and read alouds at the elementary level. And we have new 4K through 12 math resources and the professional development to implement those resources. 6-12 social studies resources are getting an update. And K-12, the International Society for Technology and Education Standards scope and sequence will be completed. And sometimes people refer to that as ISTE for short. So if you hear people mentioning ISTE, that's what they're talking about. For operational efficiencies, the board has also approved Pfefferly Maintenance to create a guide and training program for us. In terms of safe and orderly environment, the board has also approved or will soon be approving the participation for a social worker to be hired and shared with neighboring districts and Waupaca County Department of Health and Human Resources, and that same shared group agreement with Catalpa Therapy. And with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Upper. All right, announcements, contributions to the district. We received donations from Storm Foods Incorporated and Carrie Jepson drink mix packets for the 2021 prom. First State Bank and Mary Griffin cases of water for the 2021 prom. Jeff and Sarah Bortle, $100 donation to the Little Oak High School Drama Club. Thank you to the Ad Hoc Human Growth and Development Committee members for volunteering their time and expertise. Those members included Dr. Opper, Mr. Wolfgram, Miss Yu, Miss Connolly, Mrs. Zemer, Mr. Murphy, Pastor Reichly, Pastor Rice, Dr. Gedderts, Mrs. Risky, Mrs. Bushke, Mrs. Pinnenberg, Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Holman, Mrs. Petke, Jack O'Brien, Soshi Grimm, and Emma Risky. Thank you to the Ad Hoc Middle School, High School Gym Refinishing Committee for volunteering their time and expertise, and that included Mayor Mike Frazier, Sean Buchholz, Mary Griffin, Mr. Wolfgram, Mrs. Miller, Mr. Collins, and Dr. Opper. So thank you to everyone who spent their time, and as well as those who have given their talents and monetary talents as well. Consent agenda. Typically for consent agenda, that would be things where we approve the minutes and treasurer's report, any retirements or resignations. As a board, we do vote by general consent. What that means is if you do not dissent, you don't answer, no one says anything. And you have the right to have any item removed from the consent agenda to be dealt with separately. Would any member like any item removed from the consent agenda to be addressed separately?
May I have a clarification?
Sure.
The special board meeting, would those minutes include the step volunteer and tutors information?
That would be the minutes which are in the packet.
Okay, because I do take exception with this mandatory vaccine situation here. It is against federal law to mandate vaccines.
So we're not asking for you to go back and agree with a decision that the board has made. What we're asking for is approval of the minutes as they are written. So what that means is, are the minutes as they are written correct?
So you're saying that as it's written, the board approved the mandatory vaccine requirement for step volunteers and tutors. Is this correct?
It is specific to step volunteers, and it was approved to allow them to come back into the school building if they have been vaccinated. And there are exceptions to that.
That's not
under
what, but that's not what the slide says.
federal law.
That's not what this says.
Okay, so we're talking though about the minutes. We're
Then
not
I guess
talking
I
about
do
a
not agree
decision.
with what minutes state. So yes, I would like that pulled for further discussion.
Okay. Are there any other items that a member would like to be pulled for further discussion? Okay, so we vote then by general consent with the exclusion of the March 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes. And hearing no dissent, the consent agenda carries. Item 11, the March 30th, 2021 Board of Education meeting minutes. So specifically, what are you disputing that happened in that meeting that you do not believe is accurately reflected in the minutes?
I believe that as this slide is stated, it doesn't state anything about exceptions on here. It states fully vaccinated is when you can come back. It implies mandatory vaccination, which is against federal law. And the federal law, to be specific, is 21 U.S. Code 360 BBB-3, Section 1A, required conditions, and within Section 1A, Section 2, subsection 3, of the option to accept or refuse administration of the product. And so we cannot force anybody, and that's what this implies, that they have to take a vaccine that is not approved by the FDA. It is approved for emergency use, but not by the FDA.
Okay. So in the minutes, The motion was made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Pecky. Motion by Mrs. Pecky, seconded by Mr. Johnson to approve the revised district-wide school reopening protocols phase. And it was voted unanimously by a roll call vote. Are you disputing that that is an accurate statement?
What I dispute is the legality of what this slide says.
That is very different than approving minutes.
Okay, well, again, if I approve the minutes, then I am saying I approve what's in there, and I do not approve what's in there.
By approving the minutes, you're approving that the minutes are accurate of what occurred in that meeting. So what that means is, just like in the previous one, who made the motion, who seconded it, who voted in favor of it, who voted against it. You're not speaking to the merits of it. You're not affirming that you agree with it. You simply are stating that the minutes are correct as they have been reported.
So we reported that this school district, as this slide says, mandates vaccines. And if that's what was voted on at that time, I don't believe that it was a correct vote, but if that's what was voted on, that's, again, I guess that is what was voted on.
So then when you have an issue with something that you do not agree with, you would take it to the appropriate policy and request that it be put onto a policy agenda to be dealt with. That is separate from approving minutes.
Okay. It's the first time, just trying to understand. If, again, I don't feel comfortable approving something that I believe is an illegal activity.
Okay, and you're not, by approving minutes, you're never agreeing with the actions that were taken. What you are agreeing to is the fact that it is reported correctly by Mrs. Flynn, who refers to the recording if she has any questions. But generally she does, just like our committee minutes. They're approved on the basis of whomever took them, who made the motion, who made the second, who
Okay.
voted in favor, who voted against.
Okay.
So then she would have to get that on a policy.
Correct. Yep, that would have to go on to a policy agenda to be dealt with.
And that policy agenda procedure is what?
You would talk to the chair of policy, and that is myself. So that would be the board reopening plan, and it is noted to include that on the next agenda for policy and human resources.
Thank you.
I just throw something in, it's kind of related as long as we're on committees and that. Is it correct that any board member can attend the committee meetings?
Absolutely.
Only the members of the committee can vote,
Correct, that is correct.
right?
Yes, sometimes for example, staff and programs changes generally garner a lot more interest than your average curriculum committee. And, we've certainly had all members present at some meetings when it's been something that's been discussed. All right, so at this time, we then need to vote to approve the minutes of the March 30th special board meeting. We would need a motion for that.
Make a motion that we approve those meetings.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. I did not see anything in the chat box. Correspondence, there was no correspondence this month. Board recognition, we have some student recognition for Ted Emmert for his submission to the WSMA Student Composition Contest. And I see that Ted is on and Mr. Wolfgram as well. Mr. Wolfgram, if you'd like to let us know what Ted has accomplished.
Absolutely. I'm very, very proud of Ted. This this honor is near and dear to my heart. As many of you know, I was a music teacher for 25 years, and I also happen to be on the board of directors for Wisconsin Schools Music Association. Ted is being recognized this evening for his submission to the Wisconsin Schools Music Association Student Composition Contest. He is the very first student to submit an original composition to this state contest. Though Ted did not place, he wrote a piece his freshman year, now sophomore year, for piano without assistance. This is a huge feat nonetheless. Mr. Rowan submitted it this year to the piano class solos. There were 102 submissions by 81 students around the state, subcategorized by concert band, orchestra, instrumental solo, instrumental ensemble, piano solo, piano ensemble, and vocal solo, as well as vocal jazz, instrumental, and jazz. As a piano player, I never fancied myself an accomplished accompanist, nor was I a great composition person. I did get a chance to look at Ted's composition, and Mr. Rowan did provide a MIDI file of it, but I'm not going to play it for you because it doesn't do it justice. Mr. Emmert, I would love to be able to hear you play this for us in person someday. It's a lovely composition, and I can't tell you how proud I am to have somebody of your caliber submit something and represent Little Wolf High School as well as you did. Your parents are, I know your mother's a musician. I'm not sure if Dad's on tonight, but I wanted to be able to say congratulations and thank you for representing the school district of Manawa at such a high level.
Thank you.
Can you,
Congratulations, Ted. Can you tell us a little bit about your plans for the future?
Well, I'm planning on going to college for music, specifically for composition, and that's what I would like to do.
That sounds really exciting. Do you have your sights on any particular college at this point?
Not yet.
Wonderful.
All right, anything else you'd like to share with us, Ted, about the process or what happened or any other thoughts that you have?
Sure. Well, the piece is written about 3 locations that I visited while on a trip to the British Isles. And I composed the first parts of that piece while I was there. And it took until I got back to fully finish it off. And I'm just very glad that I was able to represent the school district of Manawa in such a positive way.
Thank you very, very much, and congratulations. That is quite a feat, and definitely a feat for the district that you've done that. I know Mr. Rowan is a great teacher when it comes to teaching composition, so I am pleased to see that you've accomplished this. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A board certificate will be delivered to you through Mr. Wolfgram at school in the next couple of days. You can be looking forward to that. And maybe there's a little photo opportunity between you two musical aficionados.
Congratulations, Ted.
Congratulations.
All right, Dr. Upper, your report.
Thank you, President Johnson. Abby Risky is on with us this evening representing Student Council. So Abby, if you'd want to take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your future plans.
I have Emma here with me too.
Wonderful. Welcome, Emma.
Well, right now we have prom coming up, so we're doing all the dress up days that are involved with homecoming. Normally, we're gonna do those this week, and then we have the dance on Saturday from 8 to 11, with the coronation at 9.
There are also going to be the Wednesday night games like usual. Masks will be required for everyone in attendance. The only exception is the eating contest.
And then for Teacher Appreciation Week, we also have a few things planned there. We're going to do, on the 5th, we're going to have a teacher breakfast where teachers can come in and get breakfast that we've made. And throughout the week of Teacher Appreciation Week, we're going to do staff bingo, staff trivia bingo.
So what happens if you win the bingo? Are there prizes?
Prizes awarded. You have the specifics of the prizes?
Hold on, give me 1 second real quick here.
I believe the prizes will be some sort of gift card.
I'm not aware. I'm sorry, I am not aware of what the prizes are going to be yet, but there will be prizes.
Oh, that'll make it really fun. People will enjoy that. So are there any other happenings at the high school that you'd like to share with the board, or topics that you would like to raise with the board members this evening?
None in particular, no.
And usually at this point, board members have an opportunity to visit with our student council representatives.
Anyone have any questions for our reps this evening?
Where's the dance at?
It is being held at the Thrasher Grounds in Simcoe.
So do you think that'll be a fun change?
I think it will, yeah. It'll be a change of scenery.
Very true.
Easier to do the COVID protocols like social distancing.
Definitely be a little different look this year.
That's for sure.
You don't have to travel too far to take pictures. Usually they go down to the Thrasher Grounds to have their pictures taken. So look at you right there.
And in your case, Mom can just walk down and take the pictures, right? Well, thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you, and it's something we look forward to having student council representatives visit with us each month. Some of our most outstanding student leaders participate in that organization, and they also challenge us sometimes with questions that are on the minds of students. So they provide that voice or the liaison between the students and the board. So thank you very much to both Emma and Abby for being on tonight. Our legislative update this evening is relatively brief. I did want to make you aware that on Tuesday, April 27th at 1 o'clock, the State Assembly Committee on Education will be holding an informational hearing on school funding as related to the counting of students. So there's been some debate as to whether the third Friday in September count and the second Friday in January count would be used from the current year, or if it would be previous year, how summer school would be counted. Last summer, of course, was not a typical year. So they're hearing information on those topics in order to make a decision. This Friday, I'll be attending the legislative breakfast in Oshkosh, which is the CISA 6 superintendents, as well as legislators from across the state, whomever might be available to participate. And we've been invited to talk about our budget story. So every district, large or small, tells their story to the legislators to help them better understand the impacts of their decision and the strategies or ideas that would be of the greatest benefit to us as a district. They've also invited us to talk about labor-related issues. There are shortages of employees in all sectors of employment at this time, but we certainly see it in education as well. So we'll be talking about strategies for encouraging and enhancing individuals' interests in pursuing the field of education. And then we'll be talking about any particular other state budget agenda items that might help to support schools. One example of that would be the enhancement of broadband internet access. And we have the monthly enrollment report, which is in your packet, but I also do have it on screen. So over the course of the month, a relatively large family moved out of the district. So you see a bit of a fluctuation there in the population that had been fairly stable. And we are currently at 668 students. Next, I wanted to share with you.
Dr. I have a quick question on the enrollment. How does our current enrollment compare to the estimate that was put out at the time of the referendum?
I would have to look back and share that information with you in the next day or so, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. I will make note of that. And then in terms of what has been happening with curriculum, one of the things I shared was that this district has done an exemplary job in providing professional development across the board for both teachers and support staff on a wide array of topics. That went out this past week for staff members to start signing up. People can do this for financial compensation. When it is a sit and learn type environment for teachers, that's paid at $20 an hour. It's $25 an hour for curriculum writing or interactive type things where you produce a product at the end. And then we also have our salary advancement model where staff are looking to accumulate professional development points of roughly 40 points a year over the 6 years that they're inside a particular level before they move to advancement. So this is one of the ways that people can accumulate points by attending these presentations, all of which are free for staff to participate in. So we have nonviolent crisis intervention, CPR, which is available and required for many of our coaches nowadays. ALICE is the hands-on portion of the training for safety protocols. And then you'll see all of our math programs have presentations this summer in order to launch the new math program in the fall. And we also have a wide array of literacy-based programs for teachers across all grade levels. And then we also have a nice variety of technology-based offerings. So I just wanted to share that with you. Quite an accomplishment for a district our size to be offering so many opportunities. And I do not have any new information on COVID at this point in time. But we do continue to have the weekly meetings with the county. That is midday on Wednesdays. And then Thursday evening of this week, I'll be participating in a statewide Wisconsin Department of Health Services meeting, and they update anything new that's relevant to schools in the state of Wisconsin. So if at any point the CDC changes any of their recommendations, they then go to the state for adoption, and then the state relays those to us in a timely manner. So they've had quite a few of these meetings over the course of the year. And then finally, we will again be participating in the Seal a Smile program through Family Health La Clinica. And so we have that MOU signed, and it provides very valuable support to our families where dental care is needed. So someone comes into the district and provides the services to students in a confidential manner, but very much appreciated given our poverty rate hovers around 40%. Any questions on any of those topics this evening?
Dr. Hopper, can you give us an update? I know you said you don't have a COVID-19 update, but can you give us an update as to where we're at as a school district as far as our student body? Is anyone out this time, or where we're at?
The news is all good at this point. Like much of the county schools, we're at 0. So no currently active cases going on right now. So we're very optimistic that we've turned the corner and that we're seeing the light at the end of this tunnel. I know we're all eager to resume what would feel like much more normal activities. Thank you for asking.
So we have no active cases. Do we have anyone out on quarantine due to close contact? I forget what the terminology is, but
we had previously had 2 students. I do believe they've also returned.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Upper regarding her report? All right, thank you, Dr. Upper. School operations report. The principal's reports are in the board packet. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Brower or Mr. Wolfgram regarding their reports?
I do. In the elementary school, I do see that you noted that we had covered the Earth Day and everything. I'm just curious as to whether you covered April 9th, POW Day, April 13th, American Creed Day, and April 19th, Patriots Day, as is required by our policy 2221.
We did celebrate those with announcements. We didn't do any big programs. We did for Earth Day, we had the students all go out and clean up our schoolyard. So that's why I noted that one specifically. But most of the other days we do just basically through announcements and education in the classroom.
Is that the same for the high school and junior high? Mr. Wolfgram?
That would be correct. We have them slated for announcements, and we do celebrate them in that manner, and whatever the other teachers choose to exemplify or expand upon, but it is on the announcements as part of that policy.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Brower or Mr. Wolfgram, did you have any comment?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Business-related reports. Are there any questions for Mrs. O'Brien regarding her report?
I guess the only thing I have as a question is, we have the table where we have if we get the budget or if we don't get the budget. What has there been discussion of if the budget doesn't happen as far as the governor, what's the next step? I guess when does that discussion happen? Because it appeared to be a pretty big chunk of change.
Sure. I actually have quite a bit that I'd like to expand upon with that. First of all, though, I want to welcome all of the board members tonight, and especially our new members. For those of you that don't know, I taught science at Little Wolf High School for over 17 years and before going into administration full time. So I consider one of the best parts of my job is being able to teach you and others about the School District of Manawa finances. I included as part of my report and what you're referring to there, Ms. Ryerson, a recap of last month's presentation about some of the most pressing financial topics for the district. So, please feel free to go back and listen to that full presentation in the March board meeting recording. But what I have for you in that summary is just a recap of that kind of, I entitled it current financial summary. I pared down the presentation to basically 5 topics that I feel that the board members really should be aware of right now. So on page 56 of your board packet, there's 5, number 5 or 5 numbered items there. So first, Governor Evers presented his biennial budget in February of this year. So right now we are waiting to hear what the Joint Finance Committee will recommend in response to the governor's budget. So we're really just kind of in limbo right now. I use a software company. I use software, from a company called Forecast5 for our own budget forecasting. So the numbers that are listed under number 1 there, they're estimates of the effects with and without the governor's proposals to the district budget. So certainly, these are estimates and we don't know what the Joint Finance Committee is going to do yet. So you can see that if nothing changes, the district will face about a $400,000 shortfall in the 2022-23 school year. The second point there piggybacks on the first, in that we know in advance when the district is going to be facing shortfalls. So this has allowed decisions to be made before the situation becomes dire. And as mentioned before, we know that we could be facing a shortfall in 22-23. So adjustments have already been started to be made in staffing through attrition. So we keep valuable employees working for Manawa while still keeping that budget in check. So we know that this is going to happen, and we're able to make plans, for that now, even though it's 2 years down the road. The third point is that we are intentionally spending down the fund balance to complete the paving project at the middle and high school this summer. So this project will close out that $12 million construction referendum. When we were thinking about which should be our last project under the referendum, this one was chosen because it's a large project that would be very difficult to do without the available referendum funds. And it allows us to spend down the right amount of fund balance to continue to maximize our state aid. The fourth one there, that number 4 goes hand in hand with number 3 and speaks to the amount of money I recommend keeping in fund balance so that the district does not need to short-term borrow. Our first state aid payment does not come in until December, which is 5 months after the start of our fiscal year. So if we keep the fund balance at about 22% of the previous year's expenditures, there should not be a need to short-term borrow. So that's why I keep that recommendation at 22%. Board policy requires that the fund balance be kept at 18% of the previous year's expenditures. The fifth and final point speaks to how the money from the federal government for COVID relief is being spent in the district. It's important to note that the funds are being spent on things that are needed due to the pandemic,
and they're not being spent on general budget expenses such as transportation or electricity or heat or things like that. So it's definitely for things that have come up due to the pandemic. I just want to finish by reading my last paragraph. In summary, the School District of Manawa is financially stable. ESSER 2 and 3 monies will allow the district to catch up and get ahead in updating essential learning materials. The referendum projects have allowed the district to replace and or repair building infrastructure. With proper planning, and as long as the state continues to fund public education at current levels, the district is financially poised to continue to meet the educational needs of this community well into the future. So I invite everyone to attend the next Finance Committee meeting on May 11th at 5 p.m. so that we can continue to navigate the next steps in this budget process. Hopefully the state will have some new news for us by then. I believe the Joint Finance Committee has just wrapped up their statewide tour of kind of a Q&A session. So hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll have some more information for you about that.
I see that the board policies that we have an 18% fund balance, and you are saying there at 22% will keep us from having to do the short-term borrowing. I'm wondering if it might be wise for us to relook at that and maybe increase the 18% to 22%, or some variety of that.
I guess, how was the 18% arrived at? What was the methodology behind that? That would also indicate if we need to update the methodology of calculation.
That actually was an old board policy, and off the top of your head, Dr. Upper, do you recall roughly when that policy would have been established?
Oh gosh, no.
It was one of the very old ones. So it would have been based on the percent of funds needed to pay bills through the month of December. So we don't want to have less than the 18%. There's not a problem with having more as long as we do spend what we budget so that we're eligible to receive the resources from the state when we do the state aid calculation, which is a worksheet that generates how much state aid you're eligible to receive.
Right, so it is a policy that goes back many years. And yeah, it certainly is something that could definitely be revisited to see, does it make sense? Because you're correct, Mr. Holman. I mean, the 22% seems to have put the district in a slightly better position. Although historically, we'd have to go, yeah, it would probably be something for Finance Committee to take a look at historically, what has the fund balance been for the last decade, maybe.
It's probably been 18%, but it's old. But my question is maybe we should change it. No one even knows how it was arrived at.
Right. No, that was one of the policies that we just said. A lot of the financial policies actually just were rolled over. They were past precedent and practice from previous boards, and we just rolled them into policy.
For Finance Committee, next meeting, I will have something available for the committee to look at, and we'll take a look at what the fund balance has been in the last, like you said, like 10 years.
Yes, yeah, I think that would be a good start.
So is that a review by the Finance Committee, but a consideration by the Policy Committee?
Yeah, Finance would probably make that review first and make a recommendation on it, and then it would go to policy to change the actual board policy.
So perhaps you should add that to the agenda. I know you had a topic earlier that Mrs. Ryerson had asked, at least for future, so it doesn't get kind of lost in the shuffle, that it gets added to the agenda for the Policy Committee going forward.
Yep, got a note right here.
And maybe Mrs. O'Brien could do some research or thought on the subject and see what you would recommend.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, any other questions for Mrs. O'Brien? All right, thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you.
Director's reports. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Covarrubias about his report? And any comments tonight, Mr. Covarrubias?
Well, I did put in my my resignation and my attempt to not renew my contract for this year. So I just want to say thank you for the last 4 years. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have enjoyed working here for the last 4 years, and I just wanted to just take a moment to say thank you to the board for that.
And thank you for your service to the district. All right, board comments. Does any board member have comments that they wish to share at this time?
I have a concern that there is the potential of conflict of interest having Dr. Gedderts as our medical advisor. He has been an active member of the DHS County Committee since at least March of 2018. We already have Mr. Wolt advising us on COVID activity, and now we also have someone who is directly involved with the decisions he's making, also telling us what to do. I believe that, we should have someone who is independent of the county DHS giving us, another view, another perspective as to what's going on there. And for our policy review, I believe, please note a policy 9130, because I believe there's also a conflict of interest there. I want to make sure that we are also taking a good look at state statute 118.03 to ensure that we are actively following what state statute requires.
All right, thank you. Any other board members have any comments to share publicly? All right, committee reports. Some of our committee chairs remain with us. Does anyone have any questions for the committee chairs regarding their respective reports?
Mr. Holman, on the curriculum situation, all of the new curriculums that we've been looking at in the training, in anywhere do these curriculums contain any reference to the 1619 project, white privilege, or diversity training?
That is an excellent question, which I do not have an answer for.
Because there are many of the people in Zone 4 that have a great concern for
Yes,
those
I do
topics.
also.
And I understand that the social studies program, that's like a 3-year setup. Do we have guarantee that curriculum will stay exactly as it is for the next 3 years? Or we get 2 months into it and all of a sudden the curriculum changes, I guess, because we're approving a 3-year situation. I'm trying to understand.
Right, I believe, Dr. Opper, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe any changes would have to be approved by us. Is that not correct?
And you're adopting resources, not curriculum. The curriculum is written and board approved. These are resources that the teachers use to supplement other materials that they might have in the classroom. So it's not unusual for them to also be using source documents from the Library of Congress and other publicly available tools to teach the students. So this is a change. The online discovery ed resource is chosen because they do keep up-to-date and relevant resources online. So as history evolves every day, they will be adding content that's relevant so that teachers can not only teach current events, but also provide the historical perspective.
Could you repeat those?
The concern is that within this curriculum and within the teaching materials, that the 1619 project, white privilege and diversity training, would sneak into there without the board knowing and approving that activity.
Or is any of it in there now?
Right.
I just heard about that over the weekend. Are you aware of that, Dr. Hopper, at all?
It is not currently in your board-approved curriculum.
Thank you.
One other question I had for the curriculum committee, I know we have the human growth scope and sequence was in there, but I didn't see anything specifically on the abstinence. Was there, I mean, it's two different items on our agenda here, and I was just trying, I didn't quite see that. I saw it was kind of all, seemed to all be lumped into one thing. Is there something specific that goes along with that human growth development, abstinence, and other forms of birth control program?
I'm not sure if I understand your question, but like the main thing is, first of all, is abstinence, but also they will go into the other.
And, you know, because I didn't see it broke out within the meeting notes, so that's why I was.
Dr. Hopper, do you have anything you could add?
There is no attachment because it's a straightforward decision. There are two choices that are typically put forward. One would be an abstinence-only program. In that program, abstinence would be the only topic discussed when it comes to birth control as the most reliable method. In the abstinence plus, the plus is teaching about other forms of birth control in addition to reinforcing that abstinence is the only 100% effective means of birth control. So the first decision you make is which type of program are you going to offer in the district. The committee has recommended the Abstinence Plus program, and that's what's been in place in this district, at least over the last 7 years that I've been here.
Okay. There were a couple of what appeared to be textbooks listed in there. My body belongs to me, and it looks okay to be me. Are those materials that are listed on our approved textbook list?
I can double check that for you.
I didn't see them on the list that you gave me last month.
They've been in use for quite some time by the school counselor. So I will check that.
Dr. Hopper?
Yes, ma'am.
I really think that they're not necessarily textbooks, but they're resources that are used for specific lessons. So they're not like a traditional textbook, they're more lesson-based materials.
I guess I think that word textbook needs to have another review. Because if we're going to be, you know, pulling vocabulary out of things and, you know, handing something out as a training material to someone, I believe that kind of falls into what I would consider a textbook.
Well, if only these are basically used by the instructors, right? I was just thinking then that would be a resource book.
I guess that we need to probably do a better job at defining what that is.
We can certainly take a look at that.
I think that's all I had on yours.
All right. Are there other questions for other chairs? any chairperson have any comments? Okay, unfinished business, there was none this month. New business, so by way of explanation, generally, the topic's read, there's a motion, there's a second. It gives the opportunity for discussion, a call for the vote, and then a statement of the result of the vote. You can rescind a motion, you can amend a motion, you can request an item be tabled, and then it would send it back to the committee from which it came. And if a motion is not seconded, it's considered to be a failed motion. But for Robert's rules, you need a motion and a second to discuss. First item of new business would be consider approval of secondary social studies material adoption as presented.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve of secondary social studies materials adoption as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Pecky. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of 2 day of instructional design work for secondary social studies teacher at the $25 rate as presented.
Go ahead.
Carrie Jepson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve 2 day of instructional design work for social studies teacher at the $25 rate as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Jepson. Do I have a second?
Mr. Holman, I second it.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval of animal science veterinary medicine textbook adoption as presented.
Sandra Ryerson, make a motion to accept the approval of the animal science and veterinary medicine textbook adopted as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Pecky. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, consider approval of the Human Growth and Development Abstinence plus other forms of birth control program type per the recommendation of the Ad hoc Human Growth and Development Committee.
President Holman, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Human Growth and Development Abstinence plus other forms of birth control program type per the recommendation of the Ad hoc Human Growth and Development Committee.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Pecky. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, consider approval of Human Growth and Development scope and sequence as presented.
Mrs. Pecky, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Human Growth and Development scope and sequence as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Pecky. Do I have a second?
Mr. Holman, I second that.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider approval of the ACT Aspire 2021 proposal as presented.
Sandra Ryerson, I ask the board approve the ATC Aspire 2021 proposal as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
Carrie Jepson, I second.
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, consider approval of 5th grade transition proposal as presented.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the 5th grade transitional proposal as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second? Mrs. Pecky, second. Second by Mrs. Pecky. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, consider approval of staff salary and wage increases as presented.
I need to recuse myself correctly.
Yes,
Yeah, myself.
okay. Okay, Mrs. Pecky and Mr. Johnson have recused themselves due to potential conflict of interest, so I would be looking for a motion on this.
Pete Griffin, I move that Manawha Board of Education consider approval of staff salary and wage increases as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Griffin. Do I have a second?
Jepson, I second.
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with Pecky and Mr. Johnson recused. I will go grab them and call them back. We're done. All right, item I, consider approval to include date of payment for school board member salaries in the annual meeting resolutions.
I move that the, Russell Holman, I move that the Manawha Board of Education move to include the date of payment for school board member salaries in the annual meeting resolutions.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Pete Griffin, second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion?
Yes, do we have a date or is that something that we would do every year at the annual meeting?
There is a date, but it would then become part of the actual resolution at the annual meeting. And Mrs. O'Brien, it is always March 30th or 31st.
And depending on if the 31st falls on a weekend, it's the last business day of the month.
Right, so that would then become part
Of March?
yes, of March.
Yes,
So that was that, because there was confusion about when board members received their stipends. So the recommendation was that if it was actually incorporated into the language, then it would be there
Yes.
for people to look back and know. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item J, consider approval of awarding the middle school, high school gym floor refinishing to hardwood specialists and craftsmen to install design version 4 as presented.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the awarding the Manawha middle school, high school gym floor refinishing to hardwood specialists and craftsmen to install design version 4 as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Pete Griffin, second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion?
You do have samples of the wood to President Johnson's right and a copy of the diagram. So if you want to see how it would actually look on stained board to get a feel for it, that's available as provided by hardwood specialists.
Give everybody a moment to take a look.
I did see a gym floor like this a couple weeks ago and it really looked nice.
And the darkness on there, the white is going to look, what he explained to us there is, it's going to look more like the wall there. It's not going to be yellow like it looks in that picture. It's just the way it's printed.
And this design was approved by or recommended by our current athletic director as
No,
well?
we had a committee.
Right, but she was included in that?
Yes.
Yes, it was. Okay.
I lost our committee members here. Yeah, it was Mayor Frazier, Mrs. Buchholz, Mrs. Griffin, Mr. Wolfgren, Mrs. Millard, Mr. Collins, and Dr. Opper were part of that.
And that was recommended by that committee?
Correct, yes. Yes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item K, consider approval of the revised 2021-22 school year calendar as presented.
Mrs. Peck move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the revised 2021-2022 school year calendar as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Pecky. Do I have a second?
Sandra Ryerson, I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Ryerson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item L, consider approval of Wapaka County Shared Social Worker position for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Sandra Ryerson, I wish that this be tabled for further discussion.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson to table. Do I have a second?
I second it, Russ Holman.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to table carries. Item M, consider approval of spring events as presented.
Terry Jefferson, I move the Manawha Board of Education approve these spring events as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Jepson. Do I have a second?
Pete Griffin, I second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion?
Yes, there's, in several of these proposals, it's listed that the DHS capacity recommendation. Where is that documented? Because the Supreme Court said there is no capacity limits anymore. I'm trying to understand where we're coming up with this reference within our memos.
Mr. Wolfgram, if you would care to speak to that.
These are recommendations that we've been following from Mr. Woolett as he has been recommending to the district for limited capacity.
And where is that documentation of his reference to this as far as his thought process? Because I don't see him listing any of that within his county documents.
I will need to look at that documentation and get that to you.
Because I have concerns that we are discriminating against folks that cannot or have religious beliefs against mask wearing. And when we turn around and we are only allowing, 2 people per student to participate in their celebrations, when you have many families within the district who have a 2-household situation. I've got mom and stepdad and that kind of thing. You're forcing children to make choices between, who's going to be there and who's not. And to me, we are discriminating. And I'd like to see his information, because it's certainly not in the county information as far as what he shared with the board.
I can tell you that we've been following the recommendations both from the CDC and Wapaka County Department of Health and our district's liability insurance carrier. So that's the guidance and the recommendations that I've been following for all recommendations that have been coming forward. So I will look for something in writing from Mr. Woolett, and but that's basically what we've been following as a district.
But in the end, aren't they are just guidelines, is that correct?
They are recommendations, correct.
And we can make our own decisions here as a school?
I believe the board has local control.
I know of other schools that are making their own decisions and moving forward, and I think we need to start moving forward with ourselves making our decisions we're late enough in the game here, so I think we really need to start looking at that.
Okay, any further discussion?
So what does that mean timeline?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
For Mr. Wolfgang to come back with some of this information. And we appreciate that, Dan, the offer, but where does, I mean, some of these events are coming up pretty quickly. But I don't know which one is first. I don't recall the order of, you know, some of them, like the job shadow proposal would not be affected, right? That wouldn't be affected by the mask wearing. That was a proposal for a job shadow for Mrs. Abt, correct? So that would be affected, but some of these others would be affected in the very near future and not allow for the time for Mr. Wolfram to go back and bring that information to the full board. Am I correct?
That is correct. Some events are more pressing than others.
Right, and there is a motion currently to approve. Is there further discussion on that approval?
We want to table it.
Yeah. Did I second that one?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to pull that back and table this until Mr. Wolfgram can get back with information.
Okay, so I have.
Can I suggest that we move forward though with the high school student job shadow proposal that obviously would not be affected by the mask wearing, and that is something that if we wait any longer, she's not, that student is not going to have the opportunity to pursue that? Is that something that could be separated from the rest of this?
Somebody would like to make a motion as such?
Is that the, I guess, further discussion among the board here, is there anything else on this list that would not be affected? I think everything else is, correct?
I believe spring sports was to add a concessions opportunity for students, and concessions is a fundraiser. So I do think they would appreciate the opportunity to do that if possible.
The spring sports recommendation for the concessions?
That was to add a component that would allow for concessions of prepackaged items with students wearing gloves and different people handling the food within the money and so forth.
And that was the only recommendation in that spring sports update, correct?
That's correct. The only thing that was new coming to the board was what's highlighted in red, and those were just pertaining to concession sales.
And the other item here that I don't see being affected by our concerns is the senior walk and breakfast. Am I correct there? Anybody see a concern with masks, or, because that's all our students, right? The senior walk and breakfast proposal is only students.
That's correct.
Okay, for the sake of clarity, would somebody like to simply make a new motion?
Carrie Jepson, I make a motion that the Board of Education approve the event's senior walk and breakfast proposal, high school student job shadow proposal, and spring sports recommendations update as presented.
Do I have a second?
Sandra Ryerson, I will second that.
Any discussion on that particular motion? Hearing none, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. We also still would have the motion by Mr. Griffin to table. Mr. Griffin, would you like to amend your motion maybe to specifically table?
Pete Griffin, I move that the Manawha Board of Education table the other items other than the ones that Mrs. Jepson had taken out.
And if you don't mind for clarity, that would
I
be,
think the senior block breakfast proposal, high school student job shadow proposal, and the spring sports recommendations update.
thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Griffin. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson to table. Any discussion? Moving to,
This debate is to table until when?
Right.
This may be one of those where we're gonna need a special meeting in order to hit dates.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I think we owe it to the public and to the students and the parents and caregivers who have been wanting to support the students and are not able to be there in person, to be the one cheering and clapping and that, again, there are way too many two-family students within our district that need all the support they can get based on the year and a half that they've had.
So may I ask Mr. Wolfgram, off the top of your head, which of these is the first event and what's the date of those four that we are asking to table?
Well, graduation is the last event, and then going in regression, we'd be looking at the 8th grade recognition, which is slated for June 3rd. Actually, June 3rd is the last one. Graduation, high school graduation comes before that. Then we'd be looking at the choir and band concerts on Sunday, May 23rd and Sunday, May 16th. So, yeah, it would be 8th grade recognition would be the last event, followed by graduation and our band and choir concerts.
And the first is the choir concert on the 16th of May, am I correct?
That's correct.
That's a Tuesday.
So that is, obviously, we need to give students, families, et cetera, time, but so our deadline would be the 16th.
Sunday, May 16th is the date of the concert.
Right, so we would need a decision in advance of that, so obviously our students and families would have plenty of notice to make plans as needed.
Correct.
so how much time do you need, Mr. Wolfgram?
I think I would like to have at least a week to be able to work together with some of these stakeholders to be able to pull together additional plans.
Okay, so if we looked perhaps at the week of May 10th for a special board meeting? There's a finance committee meeting on the 11th that could be piggybacked off of that.
President Johnson, would this be referred to committee first for reworking, or is this going to have another proposal that's going to go straight to the board?
Well, it could certainly be done at the Policy and Human Resources meeting, which is set for the 12th, and then special board meeting to follow.
Not giving the families a lot of time though, at that point, if the event is on the 16th.
Yes. We'd have to be prior, we'd want to be even
A week
earlier.
prior, I would think.
Yeah,
if
I
the
mean, it'd
families
almost
make
have to
plans.
be next week
Correct.
in order to get him the time.
I wouldn't be able to make Thursday or Friday next week. Work for me.
I'm not able to do Thursday. I'll be in Milwaukee.
Nor am I. May 3rd, there is a curriculum committee at 6 p.m. There could be a special board meeting at 7 to follow.
That's Monday, correct?
Correct.
Oh, I'm talking Thursday and Friday. But I can't.
Does May 3rd at 7 p.m. work?
I probably won't be able to make that.
I can make that work.
We just need a quorum anyway.
Correct.
Fine by me.
I'll try to see if Mondays are interesting.
That would be excellent.
Yeah,
Because they can call in other ways too.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Mr. Griffin, does that work for you?
This is May 3rd?
May 3rd.
As of right now, it does, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Wolfgram, if you're able to consult with Mr. Wolt and have that information ready, then it would be for May 3rd at 7 p.m. for a special board meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And will that meeting be, can that be a combination of virtual and in person as needed by members? Okay.
Right, so then we do need to vote on that motion yet to table.
Those 4 items.
So those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item N, consider approval of district-wide pilot of the paraprofessional evaluation rubric as presented.
Sandra Ryerson, I make a motion for the board to approve the district-wide pilot of the paraprofessional evaluation rubric as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item O, consider approval of teachers for level advancement on the salary advancement model as presented. Mr. Johnson needs to recuse himself.
I guess I don't remember seeing that in the packet.
It is in the packet.
There was a list of the teachers that qualify.
Okay.
About. I don't remember what page, but.
Page 108, it was the last page of the board packet.
Oh, okay.
So we'd be looking for a motion.
Carrie Judson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the teachers for level advancement on the salary advancement model as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Jepson. Do I have a second?
First, I'm gonna second that.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with Mr. Johnson recused. I will grab him back. All right, item P, discussion of Board of Education treat for staff recognition event. Every May, the board in many recent years has done what's called a Heart of Gold presentation. There's an award that's awarded to a recipient. There's also a Friend of Education award that has been done through the Ad Hoc Recognition Committee. And the Kemp family is the one who picks the recipient of the Heart of Gold award. It is in memory of their mother, Tammy Kemp, who was a former School District of Manawha employee. And that event is set for May 19th at 2:30 p.m. And traditionally what has happened is the Board of Education has brought in food for our staff. And so last year and this year as well, it is planned to be grab and go items. So typically a board member just kind of volunteers to bring in what it is that they would like to bring in for the staff members. Last year examples were, we had apples, we had nuts. There's a number of other items that we had.
We did the potatoes, that's what
Right, we did the breakfast.
we did the
Sure.
breakfast the year before, a few years before.
Yes,
I like the breakfast idea, but it's tough to have breakfast at 2:30 in the afternoon.
That's you get up
I don't know
really
if
late.
you do it.
Well, we
What
need to-
about, just an idea, what about getting some sandwiches for them or something?
Yeah, sounds like a good
You know,
idea.
I'd be more willing to chip in money for that than chase around picking up stuff.
I would be too.
But we have to be COVID concerned, right? And we can't be making things in our home kitchen.
No, it would have to be
It would have to
that's
be
why it was, last year
prepackaged
it was prepackaged. It was just simply, you know, a grab and go item that, you know, that staff members could.
With Subway packaging. Individual packets.
I mean,
Well,
they
do
make their
it-
sandwiches
Unless
with
no one
nuts
else.
on.
Yeah.
I was gonna
How
say,
many-
prom, they do that. They have
Are
those
we
little
eating?
wrapped up.
Probably, they,
No, there's, how many staff members, and you also have to be cognizant of dietary restrictions because not all of our staff members can have Subway.
that's right.
How many staff members? Anybody speak to that?
Dr. Albert, what do we have, 120?
About, less than that. Hold on a second.
We're looking at probably around 87 right now.
Yeah.
But then you have to include also, we do invite some bus drivers and we invite the board. So yeah, I guess it ends up being around 100 after all of that.
And Mr. Covarrubias reminds us that we do have some staff members with gluten issues, so we usually try to provide a gluten-free option as well.
A lot of subs.
And if they can't.
You know what? Yeah, it's almost gift certificate time. Because, I mean, it's tough to, you know, find, you know, a grab and go that is going to accommodate all these, you know, the different dietary
Fruits,
issues.
nuts.
Right, that's really what we had done last year. You know, Dr. Upper or Mrs. O'Brien, can you recall, I mean, I know I brought nuts. I know you had.
And then you purchased the cookies from the baker at the Busy Bean. So you had the fancy decorated cookies, individually packaged, and then you had the bags of nuts. So it was very simple, just the two items.
Right, and that gave the opportunity for people just to kind of grab and go and in fact, I think last year it went into mailboxes, correct? Because we were actually virtual last year, but this year the plan is to be able to have them gather in person, but it would still need to be something that's grab and go and not.
So can you buy cases of apples and case of oranges and then do the nuts?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to buy nuts. I was thinking candy bars is something else. And
So what is the gluten? I'm not a gluten person.
you can eat fruits, you can eat vegetables,
Okay.
you can eat nuts. You only can't eat bread or grains, barley.
So this is something that the school board all gets together and
We bring it up there
Yep.
that day.
Yep, and it's a way to really honor our staff members and show our appreciation and
Well, I'm willing to get a case of apples.
so are you looking for a motion?
we
that
don't
do
actually, I
this?
mean, it's just a discussion.
Oh, okay.
There does not need to be any type of a motion made. Typically in the past, this is when we've had the discussion about who is bringing what. I would be happy to bring nuts and candy bars.
I'll bring some bananas.
I was just gonna say that. That's my favorite fruit.
I'll do granola bars. Sam's Club,
There you
big
go.
box.
Anyone else, or you certainly are welcome to pool with a board member and split costs if you want to do that
That's what I was going to
Pete,
say.
you want me to grab a case of oranges and apples?
Sure.
Split it,
I'll Put it with you.
do it that way. Now you just gotta find where to get them in the
Where are
case.
you gonna, yeah, we're gonna get a case of
Call
orange.
me Quick
Really?
Yes, when we used to do Whoop Walk, we would contact Quick Trip. I did it as well for Project Backpack. At Christmas time, you would just call them ahead of time and they will pre-order for you.
A case should have, I would think a case will have 100 in there, almost 100, no?
Depends
No.
on what, it depends on what you're looking
Size
for.
apple,
Yeah,
right?
it depends, but again, it usually, and when they
But
look at the
you-
case, they look
you
at a
don't need-
layer.
You don't need one
apple
for everybody.
Right,
Right,
for
right, you
everybody,
get
yeah.
choice.
Well, I would go in two. I don't think you're gonna have 50 in a case. I'm thinking like one of those little, I would go in.
Yeah,
first.
if I think of the banned fruit sale, you're not, no. That's not how it's gonna go. 'cause
You might be
there's-
thinking of a bushel, but
And you'll have to talk to them and see.
Yeah.
Because they can, and you wanna, I'm trying to remember how much leeway I needed to get it. I don't know.
Sure.
I'd probably call sooner rather than later.
Yeah, especially right now.
What's that?
What day is it?
It is May 19th. And it is at 2:30 p.m.
I'm wondering if someone else wants to jump in and we did 2 cases of apples and 2 of oranges.
You can do that too, the
Like
three
I
of
said,
us.
I'm willing to pitch in.
Okay, whatever.
Well, why don't we just, among the 4 of us, 5 of us, come up with different fruits and.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sure.
All right.
Works for me. Thank you.
Check on that one. That one's done.
So Russ, are you gonna check on that or?
I'll have my wife check out.
Good thinking.
All right, Board of Education members, if you are planning on attending graduation, you do need to let Mrs. Kane know, I presume, is who we want to let know. And that would be by May 7th. Is that correct, Dr. Hopper?
Yes, please. And you also have diplomas at your spot, so you can start the process of signing. Thank you.
Didn't follow anything what you just said.
Diplomas for, it's going to be clerk and treasurer to sign, and president. No, yes, president, clerk, treasurer. All right, item R, consider whether future.
Question.
Yes, sorry.
And that's on June 3rd?
No,
Graduation.
graduation is May 29th.
Okay, the middle school is June
Yeah, the
3rd.
8th grade recognition is the,
Okay, so what was that, May?
29th.
is graduation.
All right, item R, consider whether future meetings will be virtual, in person, or a hybrid to include both. And that would start with the regular board meetings.
I find it easier to discuss in person and stuff because I know that virtual, there tends to be some not always hearing everything or being able to respond in a timely manner. Those are my thoughts on
I agree with that.
Would someone like to make a motion as such?
You have to do one separate for each one.
Totally up to you.
I agree with what you just said, but the virtuals are very easy and nice.
Well, I think if we do the hybrid, we have the choice. We can make,
Right.
we're not limiting ourselves if there would be a need to do a hybrid or a virtual one for some reason. So I guess I would make a motion to approve, wait, I can't read either. Move that the Manawha Board of Education approve hybrid for the board meetings, special board meetings, and board committee meetings.
I have a motion by Mrs. Petke. Do I have a second?
I second that, Russ Holman.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion?
So the hybrid, just so everyone knows, you can do either, correct?
Correct. That would be correct.
The hybrid or the virtual part is nice for the public. We're still gonna have it broadcast. If they can't make it here, they can, I like that part. It'd certainly be nice if all the board members would be in person.
I agree, at least for the regular board meetings where there's, you know,
Yeah,
7 of
yeah.
us. Maybe the committee meetings are a little less, you know, difficult to understand. And I definitely agree with you, Pete, about the regular Board of Education meetings that I would like to see us all in person, but also allowing staff and the general public to attend virtually as needed. Do you agree? What about the special board meetings and the committee meetings?
Committee, just because of my work, I'm just never sure what time I'm gonna get back. Like today I was up above Thorpe, you know, I just never know for sure. And I hate, the guy that I ride with, I hate always. I'm gonna be back, I gotta be back, you know. So that'd be the only one that from time to time, if I'm running late, if I could do it by phone, like we did the other night, I was 5 minutes late. I made it here because the cops weren't out. But that would be my only comment is on those committee meetings.
All right, so we do have a current motion on the table and a second to continue hybrid meetings for all 3 types. We want to amend that motion, or do you just simply want to vote on it?
I think it's clear enough, right?
We pretty much.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next meeting dates, May 3rd is curriculum at 6 p.m. May 4th is ad hoc recognition at 5. Also, May 4th is buildings and grounds at 6. May 11th is finance at 5. May 12th is policy and human resources at 6. May 17th is the regular board meeting at 7 p.m. May 19th is the staff recognition Heart of Gold and Friend of Education presentation, 2:30 at the high school, middle school commons. And May 29th is the high school graduation at the football field. And there is the addition of the special board meeting to be held on May 3rd at 7 p.m. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I'm actually the chairman of the curriculum, and that's the night I can't make it.
Okay, so we would need to reschedule that meeting then for curriculum committee.
How about the 10th?
I will not be available on the 10th.
You're in finance, right?
I am also on curriculum,
How about before or after finance?
which is, what day is that one?
The 11th.
The 11th.
I was looking at the wrong day.
If we did after that,
I'm on the Sturm Memorial Library Board, and their meeting starts at 5:30.
okay, so your director of curriculum is not available that day.
What about Thursday this, well, I probably better not.
Yeah, Thursdays I'm not available.
Would it work on Wednesday, the 5th? There aren't currently any meetings scheduled that evening.
That would work for me.
Okay, Mrs. Jefferson, does that work for you?
At what time?
Could we do a 6 p.m.?
It's fine with me. I'm flexible.
I'm open at this point.
Okay, so then we would move that one to 6 p.m. on May 5th for curriculum committee.
And the special meeting would stay at 7 then, or are we going to, for the 3rd?
Yep, that one would stay at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay,
Yep,
I just
that's
want to
not
make
affected.
sure,
It's
because
only-
we had scheduled after, I want to make sure we're still
Nope,
keeping
it
that.
is independent of that curriculum committee.
Okay.
All right, I would then be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Russ Holman, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Carrie Jepson, I second.
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to adjourn carries at 9:04 p.m. Thank you.
Well, welcome, everybody.
Yes, sir.
It's just a vertical. What is it?
16.
16.